All the birds were back at practice on Friday, including A.J. Brown, despite giving us a brand new injury scare earlier this week. Although the injury or the Commanders' latest plan to slow down 11 actually work on Sunday. Plus, here how Saquon Barkley is gearing up for a rebound game this weekend, and why the Commanders' latest injury news bodes really well for the birds. I'm Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show. If you thought Act 1 of Commanders vs. Eagles 5 weeks ago was exciting, just wait until Sunday afternoon as both teams enter Week 16 with a ton to play for and some extra good old-fashioned divisional hate sprinkled on top. Washington needs this one really badly. Like right now, they currently hold the 7th and final seed in the NFC, just by a hair over both Seattle and Atlanta, and really must win to maintain that spot in the wildcard round. On the other hand, Philadelphia might have 12 wins, and obviously a shot to secure the NFC East on Sunday with a win, but apparently inside the locker room, they had no clue just how important this game was because they're so darn focused.
Told the focus. I mean, for our conversation off camera, we just haven't, that hasn't been the focus. And quite honestly, I didn't know that we had the chance to do that until you brought it up. Because it's not as boring as it sounds, we're just playing our next game. We're just preparing for our next game. And this is a really tough opponent because it's a division game. And they're a really good team. So right now we're just focusing on that. They got to give everything they have, and we're going to give everything that we got. So.
No, I know we're pretty boring. We're getting ready to go play this game. We know that if we do win this game, that will happen. But really, all we can focus on is our preparation. We haven't really talked about that. We'll talk about that after. When we're able to put the hat on or the t-shirt on there. So that's when we'll talk about that.
And so to celebrate a possible NFC East crown, let's do our weekly Guess the Stats to win a Thomas Mott Show t-shirt. So one subscriber drops a like, go down below, give me A.J. Brown's catches, receiving yards, and touchdowns. One person gets it right, I'll send them one of my t-shirts like I did 2 weeks ago for the winner for the Panthers-Eagles game. And speaking of A.J. Brown and the Eagles offense, they're obviously red hot, coming off that dominant passing victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Still though, they're going to face a familiar but new test on the outside this week, and Commanders' latest addition, cornerback Marshon Lattimore. Lattimore was traded from the Saints to Washington at the trade deadline a long time ago, but didn't make his debut due to injury until this past weekend versus the Saints, his former team of all teams. And in Lattimore's Commanders debut, he finished with 53 total snaps and 0 targets in the entire game. Now that might sound very impressive, and it is, but it was the Saints and their quarterback play, and also no Chris Olave on the outside, so take it with a massive grain of salt. Still though, guys like Jalen Hurts definitely respect the caliber of cornerback Lattimore is and are pretty interested in the matchup between him and AJ on Sunday.
I just think his presence, his ability, his speed, his experience, again, someone that's played at a very high level. And then, they got a great defensive core over there, so he's just overall a great addition for him, so that's going to pose us some challenges. We know we have to be ready to compete come Sunday versus a really good defense.
Also, quick shout out to the sponsor for today's video, Underdog Fantasy. I've actually been playing Underdog for the first time this year and have cashed in on quite a few of my favorite Eagle players' performances, which is made possible because Underdog is available in over 30 states, including California, Georgia, and Texas. And playing is super simple. All you do is call your shot by picking higher or lower on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win real money. For my picks this week for Eagles Commanders, very simple. Give me higher for Jalen Hurts' passing yards. That's higher than 205.5 right now. I think he definitely hits that again. Saquon Barkley, kind of an off week last week. Give me higher on 98.5 rushing yards. And Quinyon Mitchell, he's going to shut down Terry McLaurin. Right now, McLaurin is either higher or lower, 68.5 receiving yards. I'm going lower on that for number 17. Also happening right now, all customers can choose up to 3 NBA players during Battle of the Buckets for a chance to win a share of $1 million during the Christmas Day games. Just use promo code MOTT to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit, plus a free pick. Then just download the app and turn every bucket into a W with Underdog. Lattimore has not given up a touchdown in single coverage since 2021, which should make for a great matchup in one-on-one coverage versus the best single coverage receiver in the entire league this year in number 11. Commander fans are going to be quick to point out that the last time Lattimore played against the Eagles and A.J. Brown, he had this interception, but they're not quick to point out the fact that it was Gardner Minshew throwing that pass in for the injured Jalen Hurts, and Smitty and A.J. in that same game combined for 13 catches for over 200 yards and a touchdown. Still, Lattimore is great. I'm not saying he's bad. I think he's going to be a key factor in this game. Will he shadow A.J. Brown or not? That remains to be seen, but he's definitely giving Washington's locker room a little extra boost as seen earlier this week.
His name is what it is for a reason. And that proved itself, on Sunday. They didn't really throw at him. And that's, very understandable. But, Marshon's a great player, great addition for our defense. And, there's so much, that he has that we can learn as DBs from him, and just, super excited, like I've been saying, just to continue, going to war with him each and every week.
Now, speaking of A.J. Brown, he gave Bird fans quite a scare on Thursday after randomly popping up with a new knee injury during practice. Now, he did actually practice, but he didn't have an injury designation the day prior, so the assumptions are that he hurt his knee during a walkthrough. I guess your guess is as good as mine, but he practiced on Friday. And he told the media after practice he's going to play in the game, he committed to that, but was kind of mum on what happened with the whole knee situation.
I'm playing. Is there anything that will affect you in the game? What happened?
I don't know.
It's not game related or practice, because you took that, might have been the hip drop.
No,
thing.
I was fine after the game. Fine the next day. Fine the day after that. So just kind of comes with the game. I guess it's over a period of time, stuff like that starts to happen. But, you find a way to get through it and play through stuff. So
there's also good news for other injured Birds, as Sidney Brown, Landon Dickerson, and Britton Covey all practiced on Friday and look to be healthy and able to play this weekend. Moving over to the Commanders' injuries, and defensive tackle Jonathan Allen, who practiced this week for the first time basically all year since being knocked out earlier this season with a pec injury, well, he's not going to play on Sunday, which does help Philadelphia in terms of running the football and protecting Jalen Hurts. Also, their concussion protocol players like Zach Ertz and Jeremy Chin, they were limited on Friday, so still in concussion protocol, but a very good chance they play on Sunday. Flipping over to the run game, and it was Saquon Barkley's 26 carries for 146 yards and those 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns that was the massive difference maker in the first time the Birds played the Commanders in that Thursday night win. Barkley, obviously, though, last week had a pretty quiet Pittsburgh game, just 65 yards on the ground, so getting him involved, especially early, is going to be critical. And if you're Jason Kelce, you want the Eagles to give Barkley as many carries as possible to break Eric Dickerson's rushing record, which, as a reminder, Barkley needs 120-plus yards a game over the final 3 to get past ED. Can he do it? Yes. Will he do it? That remains to be seen. Are they sitting people out Week 18? I'm not sure, but I am very curious how the Commanders plan on slowing down Barkley the second time they faced him.
I mean, same thing since college. Saquon, powerful, burst of speed, and just a great running back, got great vision. Cut it back at the drop of a dime, so that's what makes him a great running back. His speed and his powers.
And how do you slow that down?
Just following the scheme that Coach gives us, just executing at a high level. We know what we bring to the table, so we just got to keep doing it. Coach Witt said, I think like past 5 games, we're like second in run defense, so we just got to keep doing that.
No team has actually played Saquon Barkley twice this year. This is the first time a team gets a second crack at 26, and so how does Dan Quinn adjust? Do they load the box more? Do they not really worry about Saquon and focus on the passing game? That remains to be seen. What also remains to be seen is how the Commanders plan to attack the Bird defense. Like, again, 5 weeks ago, Jane Daniels was just 22 for 32 for 191 yards and 1 touchdown and a pick. And now, injured Austin Eckler, who was their lone receiving threat in that game, is injured and he's not going to play. We tend to forget that Quinyon Mitchell was having a great season, but that Thursday night matchup versus Terry McLaurin really was the birth of Quinyon Mitchell as he held Scary Terry to just 1 catch for 10 yards. And of course, since the Q embarrassment, McLaurin has rebounded with 20 catches over his past 3 games and has lined up more on the right side of the field than he's done at all this season, which, of course, if you know Cliff Kingsbury, he likes to keep his receivers on one side of the field, so I expect Cooper DeJean and especially Darius Slay to see a lot more of Scary Terry than they saw in round 1. Also, I expect Jalen Hurts to not wear his now infamous 2-color cleat combination on Sunday, as the NFL announced on Friday, in complete no-fun fashion, they were fining the Birds QB1 $5,628 for violating the league's uniform policy versus the Steelers. Now, in Hurts' defense, he claimed that he had to wear those cleats because he had some other cleats on order and they didn't arrive in time, but the NFL obviously wasn't listening. Best part of all this, though, was the fact the NFL's official Twitter account posted this picture praising Jalen Two Shoes before the fine and then deleted the tweet after, which, again, is classic NFL. Also, massive shout out to everybody who donated to the Jalyx Hunt, Thomas Mott Show, and Philly Special Show joint campaign to raise money for local Philadelphia high schools, and we're up to, $4,300 total just from these 2 channels. Well, our money was actually put into use yesterday as Jalyx Hunt officially visited Little Flower Catholic High School and Frankfurt High School this past week, along with a friend of the show and the connection man himself, Justin Brown. Follow him on IG. I'll link him down below. He's awesome. But Hunt took the $4,301 that myself, Josh Davis, and him all raised together and did a ton of generous donations, including $2,500 to the Little Flower Sports Program, and then delivered 6 cargo-sized boxes, or $3,000 worth of Ace Sportswear, to the Frankfurt High School team, and gave us a pretty cool shout-out along the way.
It was great. Thank you for having me. I had so much fun meeting the team, the coaches, and the parents as well. Best of luck on your season. I hope everything goes well, and I could not have done this without the help of the Thomas Mind Show and the Philly Special.
Again, cannot thank you guys enough. This was our first kind of joint charity thing, working with the Philadelphia Eagles and Jalyx Hunt, and it could not have gone better. One more school left, more details on that whenever it happens, but so far putting the money to great use, and I appreciate all of you guys for donating. Now, to get ready for Sunday's matchup, I decided to reach out to the Philly Film Room YouTube channel, one of my favorite Eagles breakdown YouTube channels in terms of all 22 film review. Come on my show, give us your thoughts, and talk about the Birds' chances of beating the Commanders on Sunday. What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here, joined by Nick Waters of the Philly Film Room. If you're an Eagles fan, you have definitely seen his channel, one of the great, I think only great Eagle film breakdowns on YouTube right now. Nick, I appreciate you joining us here on a Saturday, getting ready for Eagles and Commanders.
Very excited for it, and thank you for the kind words. It means a lot. I put a lot of effort into it, a lot of film watching, a lot of watching clinics and whatnot. I love football. I love the Eagles, so very excited to be here and talk Eagles football.
Awesome. Well, again, if you haven't watched this channel, if you love the Philadelphia Eagles and you want film breakdowns, which we've done, I think, a lot of as Eagle fans the past couple of weeks, Nick, then obviously you're the man to go for. Let's start with the offense, though, because as, of course, we get ready for this matchup tomorrow, we can focus on the number 1 Eagle defense, and we can focus on Jaden Daniels, but in the news this week has really been Eagles offense, the passing game that wasn't, is now the passing game that is. It's, fantastic all of a sudden. What did you see last week that maybe you thought was a big change the Eagles did in order to get A.J. Brown going and Jalen Hurts going and throw for a victory against the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Well, number one, the Steelers kind of play into what the Eagles do best and how Jalen Hurts likes to attack through the air best. He likes to attack against man coverage. He likes to attack single high coverages. And when we face a team that runs a lot of man coverage, A.J. Brown tends to get the ball. You look at his yards per route run against man coverage. I think Next Gen Stats released a stat recently showing that he has the highest yards per route run against man coverage since at least 2018. So really historic stuff what he's doing. So I think part of it was just how the Steelers play their defense and playing into what Jalen Hurts likes to do, what coverages he likes to attack. I think part of it, too, was they went to more empty this week. I think the last game where they had this much empty was a Jaguars game, but a lot of empty this week. It really spreads the defense out. It allows you to, first of all, when you are defenses see empty, there's a couple of checks that they get into. There's really only a couple of different defenses that they will check into against empty. So from there, you can kind of predict what defenses are going to do. It also just makes it easier to see the reads, see who is blitzing. It simplifies the things for the offense right there. And it also allows you to get 5 guys out into a route right away. So I think going empty helped to simplify the reads for the offense and for Jalen. And you still have the threat of the run game with Jalen Hurts' legs. Going to empty puts a lot of stress on the defense because there's so many different things that they have to cover. And if it was Kirk Cousins back there at quarterback, then it's a different story. But when you have a guy that can run like Jalen Hurts, well, it creates a whole lot of problems for the defense. So hopefully we continue seeing more empty as the season goes on. Now, the downside to that is if teams want to get up here and since you only have 5 guys in pass protection, they can really start to blitz you heavy. And we saw some of those issues pop up last year. They ran more empty last year. We'll see if that's something that teams transition to, if the Eagles are going to continue running empty at this high of a rate. But Jalen's been much better against the blitz this year. So we'll see how this continues and progresses over the year. But most importantly, I think, is that they just executed better overall. The protection was better. There were some protection breakdowns in the Panthers game where A.J. Brown was running wide open on a deep post down the field, some crossing routes as well, but protection broke down right away. That was much better. Then you also got Jalen Hurts just playing more confidently, taking the throws that were available, because you look back to the Panthers game, there were throws that were available, and just for whatever reason, he wasn't pulling the trigger. Sometimes you have to hit those low points to remind yourself that you need to be aggressive and you need to push the ball. And they did that last week. And I think that in itself was the biggest difference in the passing game.
Yeah, I think Jalen Hurts against the blitz really this year has been a story that very few people have emphasized. You just kind of assumed like, oh, well, he's obviously been fantastic against the blitz, move on. Whereas last year, it was like the big knock on Jalen Hurts is that if you blitz him, especially in the playoff game against Todd Bowles' defense, he's going to fumble or he's going to throw an interception or he's going to airmail a football. It's been a massive improvement. I think, obviously, being an empty gives him, as you said, more chance to spread the field, look around, find that easy read. Where's A.J. Brown one-on-one? Attack it, and then obviously move the chains. And they were pretty impressive. And I think empty could be something that Washington has to really deal with this week as we get into this Commander game. I talked about Marshon Lattimore before, obviously, this earlier on the show today. That's an interesting matchup. And obviously the Commander fans are very high on Marshon Lattimore. He played 53 snaps last week in his first game as a Commander versus former team in the Saints. 0 targets, although it's the Saints offense and no Chris Olave. So I don't know if we can claim that he's this elite shutdown corner in general. How do you think they're going to use Marshon Lattimore? Do you think he just shadows AJ the entire day and tries to shut down number 11?
I don't think they are going to shadow him. They didn't flip him around last week, although there wasn't really anyone to flip him to. They were down Olave, Rashid Shaheed, who is a very underrated receiver, so they didn't have anyone to really shadow him with. But the problem is, if you want to shadow AJ, they have Devontae as well. I think more than likely what we'll see is they're going to rely on more too high coverages. The Commanders' defense and Dan Quinn in the past has really emphasized a lot of man coverage with the Cowboys, and then they would play and rotate in cover 2, different variations of cover 2. As a changeup. I think we'll see probably more too high coverages just because of the fact that you have to deal with AJ and Devontae. Now, I think they have a lot of trust in their other corner, Mike Sainristil, who was I think a second-round draft pick in this past draft. So I think they have a lot of trust in him. Yeah, he had a pretty good game against the Eagles in their first matchup. So I think when they do play man coverage, I don't think they're going to shadow with Marshon Lattimore. But even against the Saints, they played more cover 3 than they did cover 1. So while I do think that they are going to play a good amount of single high defense, especially needing to put bodies into the box on early downs to slow down Saquon, I think they'll probably end up relying more on cover 3. That way they don't have to worry about is Devontae going one-on-one with the corner or is AJ going one-on-one with one of these corners. I will say, I know a lot of people are, especially Commanders fans, are very excited about the Marshon Lattimore move, but if it is a situation where they think they can come out and play more man coverage against this Eagles team, well, they have another thing coming. This Eagles team is better than anyone in the league facing cover 1. So, and that's what Jalen Hurts does the best. So if they want to come out here and play a bunch of cover 1, I'm all for it. I'm very excited to see that matchup. But I do think we're going to see more cover 3 and more disguise and rotations to cover 2 and see how they're able to slow down or try to slow down the Eagles with that game plan.
Yeah, it's really the first team that gets a second crack at Philadelphia, right? Because we still have the Giants coming up for the second time, Cowboys the week after for the second time. Every single team that's faced Philadelphia has had to kind of guess, do you want to go after Saquon this week? I think Pittsburgh did a good job against that, or are we going to sit back and try and make sure A.J. Brown doesn't beat us? And so after watching, and I was at that Commander game on Thursday night, and they had a pretty good game plan in the first half, Saquon just took over in the second half as he's done most of the games this year. I do wonder if the Commanders, now that they have Marshon Lattimore, are going to go, okay, let's just pray he holds up. Let's pray he's as good as advertised and the other corners and the safeties, and let's make sure Saquon Barkley doesn't beat us. And if that's the case and they're able to actually execute on that, then maybe it's a lower scoring game in your opinion?
I don't know. When we look back to the first game, the Eagles only had 6 points going into the fourth quarter, but if you look at the game, they were moving the ball up and down the field for the majority of the first 3 quarters. They just would get to the 25-yard line and get a holding penalty, and now it's 2nd and 20. That is pretty much a drive killer at that point in time. They would get to the Washington 36-yard line, and then they would run a reverse toss back to Jalen, and it ends up in a sack. They got to the goal line, and AJ and Devontae run into each other on a mesh concept. Right. So you look back at, I have in my notes, they outgained the Commanders 434 yards to 264, 6.2 yards per play to 4.2 yards per play, and add into that 70 of those yards for the Commanders came at the end of game drive when they were down 16 points. This was really a game where the Eagles shot themselves in the foot and kept the Commanders closer in this game. I don't think the Commanders have the guys up front to slow down this Eagles rushing attack, whether they want to try and put extra guys into the box or not. The Eagles have things they can do schematically for when you do put an extra guy into the box. They use Jalen Hurts' legs, or they use motion and formations in typical ways so that they can gain a numbers advantage or at least force the extra defender to be like a slot corner or a cornerback. And then I'll take that matchup. Saquon against a corner one-on-one. I'll take that matchup, right? So if you're going to slow down the Eagles, you need to have a very good front. And I don't think with Jonathan Allen likely out still for this game, that they have the guys up front that can really slow down this rushing attack. A lot of the stuff that they were doing, even in the running game, even though it was working in the first half, but there was a lot of blown assignments along their offensive line. Once that got figured out, you look at the fourth quarter, it was Kenny Gainwell, 13-yard gain. Kenny Gainwell, 14-yard gain. Then you had Saquon coming in with a bunch of long runs, 2 20-plus yard touchdown runs, and some more to go off of that. It was just, they were gashing them once they figured stuff out in the fourth quarter. I expect the Commanders are going to come out, probably have a little bit of a different game plan, but at the end of the day, it's the guys up front is where I think this game is going to be won. The battle in the trenches. If you can't slow down this Eagles rushing attack, you're not going to stop them. And I just don't see the Commanders able to do that.
Yeah, you mentioned the rushing attack for Philadelphia, and when you flip over to the yards, especially early in that game for the Washington Commanders on offense, it was a big, catch and run from Austin Eckler. It was Jaden Daniels using his legs. It was really not much besides that. Brian Robinson, obviously, going to be playing in this one. He could be a factor, especially, early on in football games. But really, as you look at this matchup from a defensive perspective, do you see the Commanders trying to get Terry McLaurin going more in this game? Is it possible to do against Quinyon Mitchell, or would you attack the Eagle defense differently with Jaden Daniels and those running backs?
Yeah, so I think, number one, with Eckler, he had a couple of big gains. He's going to be out this game. He's an injured reserve who took a concussion, so hopefully he's all good. Hopefully he can bounce back and things are good with him. But those plays were blown assignments. And remember, this was a Thursday night game, right?
Yeah.
You have time to practice and prepare. And the Commanders do a number of things that really put your linebackers into conflict in the run game and in the pass game. And there was a couple of blown assignments. It wasn't like they were just beating these guys physically. It was just mental errors on the defensive side of the ball is how Austin Eckler was able to get a couple of his big gains. When we look at more specifically the Terry McLaurin question, I think we're going to see a difference in how they try and get Terry involved. They can't come into this game thinking they're going to win with Terry McLaurin having one catch for 10 yards. That's just not a winning formula. They don't have a Devontae Smith on the opposite side of Terry McLaurin that they can go to if Quinyon Mitchell is shutting him down. But here's some numbers to look at. Terry McLaurin, he primarily coming into and through Week 11 when playing the Eagles, almost all of his targets had come on the left side of the line of scrimmage. Cliff Kingsbury's offenses typically don't move the receivers around very much. So here's some of the numbers through Week 11. 83% of, let me back it up here. 86% of Terry McLaurin's snaps had come in on the left side of the line of scrimmage. 76% came wide left. Since that Eagles game, 72% have come on the left, so a 14% line, 66% on the wide left. But here's where things get more interesting. The targets are much more diverse now. Through Week 11, 83% of Terry McLaurin's targets came on the left, 71% wide left, so matched up where Quinyon Mitchell would be matched up with them. Since the Eagles game, 54% of his targets have come on the left, 46% wide left.
Wow.
46% of Terry McLaurin's targets are now coming on the right side of the line of scrimmage. Essentially what happened is Terry McLaurin and the Commanders had a stint in Quinyon Bay. They were scared straight, and now they're moving Terry McLaurin all around the offense now and trying to target him in different ways. His one catch and against the Eagles in Week 11 came when he was in the slot matched up with Cooper DeJean. You see what Adam Thielen was able to do with Cooper DeJean matched up on him. If I was the Commanders, I'd be looking at that game and trying to figure out ways, how can we get Terry McLaurin matched up on Cooper DeJean or at least Darius Slay and try and stay away from Q. But you never know with coaches. Trying to predict what coaches are going to do is the fool's errand, but we'll see what happens. That's what I would do if I was the Commanders coach.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, but you mentioned coaches, and Cliff Kingsbury is as stubborn as they come, and he is very set on you're going to stay on the left side, and that's going to be it. And obviously, he's moving around a little bit there. I thought the stats comparison were pretty interesting, but even Slay himself has been fantastic this year, and we just don't talk about him either because it's all about Q and DeJean, and they've been so great, and yet it's been a very, very fun year for Darius Slay. And so hopefully, if it's Slay and McLaurin more, or if they mix and match in terms of coverage, they can lock down the Commanders. I almost feel like the Commanders are kind of in the Eagle 2021 season, right? They're rookie quarterback. Jalen wasn't a rookie, but his first year starting. They weren't throwing the football that great. They were much more of a running football team with a pretty good defense, good defensive line, not elite. Do you feel the same way? Like, everyone talks about Jaden Daniels being this, miracle worker, especially early on in the season where it's like he could win MVP and he's taking the Commanders to win the division, and they've come back down to earth. Is that more so because of what Jaden Daniels has not done the past couple of weeks, or maybe teams are starting to figure out the Kingsbury offense? What's your assessment on the Commanders' rise and fall this year? Still being 9 wins, but definitely not competing for the NFC East title like a lot of people thought that they would.
Yeah, so I think when we look at these kind of things, and like we have this conversation a lot with why don't the Eagles score more in the first quarter, a lot of it comes down to everyone wants one answer. What is the one thing that's going on? When usually it's a multiple different things that happen. Number one, you look at Cliff Kingsbury's history. Typically, their offenses perform way worse in the second half of the season. They perform near the best in the first half, and then they're way worse in the second half of the season. So you get that factored into it. Add into it, typically rookie quarterbacks, especially when they come out hot, they tend to slow down at some point because once there's more film of you for NFL teams to see what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, they can start to game plan and try and force you to do the things that you're not best at. And that's then on the quarterback to work at and try and overcome. But you also have the fact that Jaden Daniels had the rib injury and when they were playing the Panthers, I believe, very early. I think that was affecting him to some degree. There was a pass against the Eagles to Noah Brown where he just threw it in the dirt on a crossing route, and Noah Brown was probably going to have a big play. Was the rib injury affecting him to some degree? If you listen to the Commanders podcasts out there, they believe that the rib injury was affecting his throwing to some degree. But I think part of it just comes down to when there's more film on you, defenses can prepare for you better. And now it's about your coordinator and your coaches and you as a player adjusting to what defenses are doing with you as well. And just overall, the Commanders, they don't have a ton of talent on the offense outside of Terry McLaurin. So it's when teams can start to game plan and take things away from you, that can be an issue. But the Commanders only scored 20 points last week. I think it was 20 points. If you go back and look at that game, though, there was like 3 plays where Jaden Daniels just overthrew Terry McLaurin for big plays. They could have easily scored another 27 to 30 points if they had just connected on those plays. And Jaden Daniels has been pretty good on the deep ball. So I think that's more of an anomaly, him missing that many times. But the Eagles don't give up deep passes. So you have to win throwing underneath against this Eagles defense. I don't know if Jaden Daniels is there at that level of the top quarterbacks yet, but he'll get there at some point.
Yeah, I think so too. I think eventually, I think year 2 with a lot of free agent spending money, a couple good draft picks, Commanders going to be a real threat next year, but I think the Eagles are also going to be right up there as well. I want to ask quickly about Bryce Huff. Obviously, we're recording this before when this show is going to come out on a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. We're probably going to know about Bryce Huff's availability by the time you're watching this show. But as of right now, he practiced this week. He's got the giant club on his left hand. I think he might get some snaps because of how much he's practiced, but it'd be very little, right? Maybe 10 to 15, trying to get the legs underneath him. But the club is obviously a big hindrance. What does Bryce Huff bring to this defensive line when healthy for a playoff run? Because whenever I talk about Bryce Huff on my show, the comment section is like, what a waste. $17 million. He's trash. Nolan Smith has 5.5 sacks this year. He's much better. I think Bryce Huff's going to do something over the course of either the regular season or hopefully the postseason in a rotational third down pass rush role that a lot of Eagle fans are overlooking.
Yeah, and when you look at Bryce Huff, when he came in, obviously when you're replacing a fan favorite like Hassan Reddick, the microscope's going to be on you. People want you to produce and perform at that level. But you got to go and look at what do other NFL offenses think of this guy, because it came to third down when it would come to obvious passing downs, whether it's 2-minute drill or end of game drives or second and long, third down. Teams were making sure that they were dedicating resources to slowing down Huff. So for that reason, you were seeing him having to figure out, really for the first time, is having to figure out how do I defeat and get around these chip blocks and then start my pass rush. And for a guy like Bryce, where his get off and his speed rush is his go-to, when you're able to slow him down like that, he's a guy he's probably going to have a bigger hit to his productivity as opposed to a guy that's a power rusher. Because oftentimes what happens is you have to get into your bull rush at that point in time when a guy chips you. There's different ways to get around it. And when we talk about chip blocks, we could talk about this for 20 minutes. The different ways that teams will chip you, whether it's with the tight end from the outside chipping inside, they line the tight end inside, chip you outside. The tight end could chip and release right away. He could chip and hold on to you for a second before letting you go. Then you add in how running backs chip as well. That's a whole process that you have to learn and figure out once teams are now treating you like one of the top pass rushers in the NFL. Make no mistake about it, though. When you get Bryce Huff one-on-one, he is going to beat you more times than not. And you look back to the Giants game. That was a game when he didn't get very much help, when they weren't helping their tackles, and he essentially wrecked that game.
Yeah.
A bunch of pressures, some sacks. He had the sack fumble against the Cowboys as well. I think he's going to come back and provide a value for this team to, number one, help take some snaps away from some of the other guys so that they're not having to redline their guys so that everyone's more fresh. But it provides a different type of pass rush than the other guys might provide. And I will say this as well is I don't know how long it really is going to take to get his legs under him. It's not like he pulled his hamstring and couldn't run for 4 weeks. You can still work on that conditioning. You can still work to a degree on your pass rush moves. I don't know the extent of his injury, but you can still practice on the bag with, hitting the bag if you got a cast on. So we'll see if he does play this week. I'm not sure if he will. Last time, we had this situation came up with Jordan Mailata. Nick Sirianni played coy with it, and then Mailata was out there and played. But he was a full participant at points during that week, so we'll see. But I think when Huff comes back, he is going to provide just an extra juice to this pass rush unit, and you add into it all those snaps that Nolan Smith now got to play just helped with his development. So you just now have an extra wave of pass rushers coming at you. I think it's going to do nothing but help benefit this already top-ranked defense in the NFL.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm really hoping that he just has a couple of moments either late in the season or in the postseason where Eagle fans kind of fall back in love with him, because it'd be hard to get rid of him on the contract that he signed unless the team wants to actually take the contract and do a trade or whatever this next year. And so I hope that he can kind of snowball the end of this season after the injury into a very successful 2025 campaign, because adding another pass rusher with year 3 Nolan Smith and the rest of the guys would be very impressive. I want to wrap by going kind of broader picture here. I've talked a lot about on my show, myself and Josh Davis on our Wednesday shows, about the playoff picture and where Philadelphia currently stands. And obviously if they win on Sunday, they win the division. They've already basically locked up the 2 seed. The 1 seed, though, is the big question. And obviously you need a loss from the Lions, probably a loss from the Vikings. You got to win out if you're Philadelphia. Your best guess, put your little, magic 8 ball in your hand or your genie hat on. Do you think the Eagles get the 1 seed, or are you pretty confident it's going to be a wild card home matchup as the 2 versus the 7 for the Eagles?
Yeah, if I had to say today, I would say the Eagles are most likely going to get the 2 seed. There's just a lot of things that have to happen to go right for the Eagles to get the 1 seed. You would need the Lions most likely to lose one of the Bears or 49ers games before playing the Vikings, because here's the thing. The Vikings, if they lose a game, they might not have anything to play for in the final game of the season. So if they're resting starters, then are we really expecting them to beat the Lions at that point in time? I went over this on my podcast. There's just so many different things. It gets kind of confusing. Well, if they lose to this team and then this team beats this team, then the Vikings might not have anything to play for, or it might not matter. So, a few weeks out, there's a lot of different things that can happen. But if I had to say, I think it's most likely going to be the Eagles with the 2 seed, but you never know. Injuries can happen. Like the Lions are getting decimated. I never hope for injuries. I hope to beat these guys. I don't want these guys to get hurt, but I hope to be able to beat them at full strength. That's the best way to come away with it, so fans aren't like, oh, you only beat this team because this guy got hurt. Those annoying narratives. But I do think it'll end up being the Eagles' number 2 seed.
Yeah, and I think we all hope for the 1, but at least as the 2, you get 2 home games, and then you got to travel if Detroit were to actually win their divisional round game for the NFC Championship game. I think Philadelphia is very much built to win on the road, which hopefully happens this weekend. So we will obviously see. Nick, I appreciate you coming on. I've been a fan from afar of the Philly film room, on YouTube. I think a lot of people in my shoes, try to pretend like we understand film and we can do film breakdowns. And I've said all along on my show, it's like, I am not a film breakdown guy. That's why I put a lot of people who break down film in my shows. And so when I found your channel, I'm very, very grateful. And I think that a lot of Eagle fans can actually benefit from it as well. So if you want to check it out, I'll link it down below in the description box. Philly Film Room, give him a subscribe, watch his shows. And Nick, we'll see what happens. And we'll talk to you, I'm sure, again, as we get closer and closer to the postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. And as much as everyone tries to break down film, there's the one thing that the more film you break down, the more you know that you don't know. So it's a constant journey of trying to learn the game, and there's new developments. So I love doing all of it. Hopefully my passion shows through and you guys can see how much effort I put into it, because I love football. I love the Eagles. And I very much appreciate you for having me on, and hopefully we can do this again.
Now, as usual, myself and Josh Davis, we will call the game on Sunday, so come hang out on either of our channels for Eagles versus Commanders about 10 to 15 minutes before kickoff. Stay for the entire game, post-game as well. We break it all down live. I'm Thomas Mott, excited for a chance to win the NFC East. This has been the Thomas Mott Show.